Thank you, Bob. My name is Brother Heru. My title is Baba Heru Tahuti Mesh. I'm with the African International Rights of Passage Universal Collective.
To us because he repulsed two invasions of Egypt by peoples called the peoples of the sea. Now this is the lid of the coffin. Let me show you what's inside his tomb. A house where these black women live. This was a Saturday morning, it was raining, so the little boy got in the vehicle, the SUV with us, and we drove a long time, and finally the driver and the little kid got out and knocked on this house. And they told me to stay in the car. They didn't have to tell me twice. And next thing you know, I'm looking to see what they're doing, and I see these two black faces pop out of a window. And they looked at me like an extraterrestrial had landed. And I waved at them, and they waved at me, and they started to smile and rub their eyes as if, could that be a black person? And so the guy came back, and he says, they said, you can come in if you want to. I couldn't wait to get out of the car. So I went in, went to the door, took off my shoes, and I spent half a day with these sisters. I asked them all kind of stuff. They said they had never met an African-American before. And so this is not her house, this is one of them. I said, wait a minute, I'll be right back. And she left me and the guide with her granddaughter and great-granddaughter. That's how much confidence she seemed to have in me. And said, I'll be right back. And so I talked to the young sister. They served us tea and coffee. I said, have you ever met a black person from the U.S.? Yes, but no, never. So these are the black women in Turkey. Next. This sister said I look just like her dead husband. I didn't know if I should take that as a compliment or I should hurry and get my tea and get out of there. And they said all their husbands were dead. And then they looked at me and smiled. I said, where are you from? They said, we are from the Sudan. And we came here about 150 years ago as enslaved people. And I said, well, my ancestors came to the United States as enslaved people. And we both started to cry. They told me that about 2 years before, that a delegation from Sudan had come there and met with them and made a big deal out of it. The media was there, the press, everybody was there. But they never heard from them again. And so they kept saying, please don't forget us, don't abandon us. They didn't have anything, they were agricultural laborers, and they said they were exploited and discriminated against based on their race. And finally, well, let me show you one or two more pictures. Next. Now, this was a sister who owned the house, and I asked her, I said, what is the future? She said, hopeless. And that was really, really a painful thing to hear. And so I got ready to go, but before I did that, I asked them if I could give them some money. I believe people should be able to keep their dignity. And these people didn't have anything. I didn't want them to ask me. I wanted to be able to say, can I help you? Can I do anything? And I think I gave each of them about $50, 4 women and a young woman too. Let's go to the next one. This is the the daughter. She's married to a white Turk whose father was, his father was in prison. I never found out why, and I didn't pry. And they all just cried for a long time. And they kissed me and asked me not to leave. It was a really, really, really emotional experience. And of all the things that I do, it's one thing to see an object in a museum. But it's quite another thing to be able to interact with African people who've been away from Africa for a long time and have a sense of being isolated and alone. And this is one of the greatest travel experiences I've ever had in Turkey. So I'm going back in October. Now, you also have people who are a bit more mixed, but you see some of those folks look like they just got off the boat. And this brother was a taxi driver, and one of his parents was African, and then this is his son. Next. And then this one, a picture that is not very good. This brother claims to have come from Egypt about 200 years ago. And I spent an afternoon with his family. So you have people who say they come from Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan, and their survivors are in Turkey right now. I'm going back in October. Next. And then next year I want to organize a tour. Can you put the next carousel on? Just take that one off. Me know that India is very big to me, that India has the largest concentration of black people in the world, something like 300 million. And this is a phallic symbol from India. I photographed this in a museum in Pasadena. Next. Focus it. Now this is a nice picture right here. And I picked this was a postcard I picked up in Amsterdam of a black child in India. Next. These women are in northwest India. They live in a state called Rajasthan. And I think that these are black untouchables in the northwest. Next. This man is from another group of black folk in India. They are from a group called the CDs. Not like compact disc CD, the people SIDDIS. And these are Africans who were actually enslaved and brought to India within the last 1400 years. And these are new pictures. Next. Next. These are the Seeds of India who say they remember Africa and have kept the tradition of Africa alive. They speak African languages, and it has been said they are the best singers and dancers and drummers in India. Surprise, surprise. Next. Now, this is an interesting one. This is from Sri Lanka, and these are people who were affected by the tsunami. A lot of folk are not aware that of the 300,000 or so people who died, I would say 2/3 of them were black people. These are tea pickers. They live in Sri Lanka. This place used to be called Ceylon, and they come from South India, and they pick tea. Next, let me show you a close-up. You can see. Next. From Bangladesh. Next. And this is a black woman from a place called the Andaman Islands. The Andaman Islands is a remote archipelago in the Indian Ocean and the Bay of Bengal. These are little black people like this with big behinds and happy to be nappy hair. And they want to be left alone. Now, one of the things that has happened, and always happens when you have a disaster or catastrophe, you have to find something positive. And one of the positive things about that whole experience is that research was done. And scientists concluded based on DNA that these people are a relic population who left Africa maybe 60,000 years ago. I suspect much longer than that. The scientists say they look like these are their exact words, they look like they belong in Central Africa, but instead they're in the Indian Ocean. And they concluded that this is what the first people of Asia look like. Very profound, but nobody's talking about it. Next. From Cambodia. Now the statue, I don't know, it looks white, but the features are clearly Africoid. I suppose it's just a choice of stone. Look at that big old nose. You can suck in a lot of air. Look at those lips. This is in a place called Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and I'll be taking a group there in April. Next. From Thailand. Next. From China. This is an image of a bronze tiger holding a black child, but it's not in China. It's from the earliest dynasty in China, but it's in the Chanucci Museum in France, in Paris, which is closed. It's supposed to open in July. Guess where I'll be in July? Next. Yeah, Shang Dynasty, and there's a close-up of it. This is in China now. Next. And this is from Central China. This is just an article I found in the New York Times. And this is an image from a Buddhist grotto in Central China. And the story goes, there are about 4,500 of these statues in Central China. Next. This is from Japan. Now, this doesn't look Africoid to me, but it's painted black. And that's a start. This is of the figure called Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma is supposed to have been the Buddhist monk from India who brought Buddhism and martial arts to China and Japan. And this is in a museum, once again, in Copenhagen, Denmark. Next. From the Philippines. Next. I'm going to finish up right quick. From Australia. That's where I was for my 50th birthday. My 4th trip there. Next. And I was able to get this image, which I think is adorable. If you want a good film about Aboriginal Australians, there's a film that came out about 2 years ago. I'm sure you can get the DVD. It's called Rabbit Proof Fence. Excellent film. And a lot of these essays and even a few of the photographs are in my book there, next, and the videotapes. Now, here's a good one. This is Tasmania. Perhaps you've heard of Tasmania. I went to Tasmania. I've always referred to Tasmania as the ghost land because most of our people were killed off there, Tasmanian Aborigines. And this is what it actually looks like. It's a beautiful place. Next. And here's another image. It looks almost otherworldly. It looks tropical, but it snows. It gets really, really cold. And when I was going through these forests, I tell you no lie, I felt like I could look out of the corner of my eye and see one of the Tasmanian Aboriginals like hiding behind a tree. It was a strong sense that I had that they were around me and they were checking me out. Next. Now, this is an image of a sister. I usually show her a lot, but I show her as an old woman. Her name is Truganini. These people were cut in half, roasted alive, castrated, skinned alive, boiled in oil, kept in cages, kept as sexual slaves, you name it. The worst atrocities you could imagine was done to these people. And all of the books tell you that all the Tasmanian Aboriginals were wiped out. Well, I found out that wasn't true. That only the full-bloods were wiped out. That certain of these black women were kept as sexual slaves by white men who hunted seals. They were British, and they kept them and raped them, and children were produced from those unions. So when I went to Australia, I met with the descendants of those original black people. Once again, a really, really emotional experience. Next. And then this was her husband, who was murdered before her very eyes. His hands were cut off with axes by 3 white men, and then they raped her while he bled to death. That's a true story. Now, look at the hair. And then look at Norm Bond and wonder if he didn't pose for this. And then you have, he's wearing seal skin. Tasmania is a small island off the southeast coast of Australia. Next. And this was the last residents of the Tasmanian Aboriginals. All the full-bloods were kept here, the ones who survived, until they died in 1876. And I went there, and that sense that they were watching me became really, really strong. I had a good time in Tasmania. I learned a lot. It was just like when I went to Ghana for the first time and I went in those dungeons. At first, it's a dreadful experience. But afterwards, you seem like a burden has been lifted from you. And it seemed like you could have a better sense of appreciation for what your ancestors went through. Well, it was the same thing here. This was the first concentration camp in the world. And also, I actually did see a Tasmanian devil when I was in Australia. No, it wasn't a white man. It was an actual 4-legged beast that, interestingly enough, was painted black. Next. From New Guinea, somebody told me last week that looked like Theodore Pendergrass. They use the word old school now. Next. From New Guinea, this big island in the Pacific. Next. From Fiji. Fiji is one of my favorite places. These people jump up in your face and say, we come from Africa. Where are you from? And if you say, I'm from Africa too, you have got a family member for life. You come from Africa? We come from Africa. And then they say, have you been to Africa? Yeah, I've been to. Tell us we want to go. Isn't it refreshing to find black folk who are not ashamed of their place of origin in Fiji? But there are some interesting things that happen in Fiji. I've been a couple of times. Let's go to the next one. This is an island chain in the Pacific. And one of the places we were going to, we encountered this little boy. Now, I was the leader of the group. I could do almost anything I wanted to do. And we had to stop at a village. Somebody wanted to use the bathroom. Somebody wanted to stretch their legs. Somebody wanted to smoke a cigarette. Somebody wanted a beer. We were going from one place in Fiji to the other. So all of us got off the bus, and we were all doing our respective chores. And this little boy walked out. And everybody stopped what they were doing to gather around this child. What's your name? You're so cute. Can I take your picture? Here's some money. And then after we left, we got on the bus. Young brother said, Runoko, Dr. Rashidi something. What kind of message do we just send to those people? I really had to think about that. Now, I thought consciously that I was drawn to this child because he looked different. Or is that really why I was drawn to the child? Is it that deep in our psyche, we do believe that the lighter you are, the lighter your hair is, the more attractive you are, and we are drawn to people like that because we have been taught to believe that. One of the things that travel does is it causes you to confront yourself. It causes you to look sometimes deep within at values and concepts that you didn't even know you possessed. Next. Next. Now, where do you think this lady is from? North Philly, huh? No. How about anybody else? From New Zealand. These people are called Whanganui Maori. And after I left Tasmania, I went to New Zealand. And these are some of the pictures that I came up with. Now, this woman looks like she could be from any part of the African world, but from New Zealand. And they are the Maori who live on the northern island on the other side of Auckland. Let me show you another one even better than that. Next. How about that? From New Zealand. You know what she reminds me of? Native Americans. So aren't these fantastic photographs? They say seeing is believing, and a picture is worth 1,000 words. Next. From Hawaii. Now, the people of New Zealand, the Maori, claim that they come from a place called Hawaii, and they see themselves as Polynesian people. And this is a little girl from Hawaii, and I bought a book as I was leaving Hawaii in November. I spoke at a conference there, and it's from the cover of a book called And Then There Were None, because most of the original Hawaiians have been killed too. Next. From Europe, Brother Gary, this is in the National History Museum in Vienna, Austria. This is probably the oldest figurine in Europe. And you just look at the hair, and we can turn around, you can see the hips. Black people are the aboriginal people of the planet, including Europe. Let's go to the next one. This one I saw in a museum in France. It's about half the size of your index finger. It's made of ivory. Look at the hair from ancient Europe. Next. This is an interesting one. This is the Rock of Gibraltar. And this is what separates Europe from Africa. And this is named after an African named Tariq, who was the head of the Moorish army, and that's where they stopped on the way to their invasion of Spain in 711 AD. I think it was called the Pillars of Hercules before then, and now it is called the Rock of Tariq, or the Rock of Gibraltar. Next. And these are the Moors. I don't know if I was here when Brother Norm and the Mata folks brought me here the last time. I don't know if I showed this slide. But anyway, it's okay to show it one more time. These are Moors in France. The Moors introduced, to my understanding, algebra, apples and oranges, and the concept of hygiene into Europe. White people at that time in Spain, white Spanish Christians, seemed to believe that it was a sin to take a bath, that bathing was a form of vanity. And some of these folk prided themselves that they never bathed in their entire lives. Okay. So it would not be inaccurate to say that Africans taught white people to take a bath. Whether they did a good job or not, I don't know. Next. And this is a Moor in Prague in the Czech Republic from the 17th century. The word Moor means black. And the Moors are described as black as pitch, black as a raven, black as a crow, black as ink, nothing white about them but their teeth. And after Spain and Portugal, they dispersed over much of Europe, and some people say, and I'm sure they're correct, that many of them even came to America before Columbus. Now, this is from a book that I purchased in Prague in the Czech Republic. I went to Austria, and I had a free day. I could either go to Hungary or the Czech Republic. And I went to the Czech Republic, I went to Prague, and I didn't like it. First of all, it wasn't the place for an African to be. I think it was Muda Baruka said it's not good to stay in a white man's country too long. It was a white country. Few Senegalese there trying to make a living, but it was not a comfortable place. People were not friendly. Now, in order to get there, you had to exchange a little money, $20, $25, and I had this money in my pocket, and I couldn't find anything to spend it on, so I bought a little book. And there were 6 people who left Vienna and went on this trip. I was the only brother. And there was a little Jewish lady in the car who never stopped talking, going or coming. When I put my headphones on, she was still talking. I could see her lips moving like that. So she said, "What do you got there?" And I said, "Well, I bought this book." "What kind of book?" I said, "It's a book. It's a book on the Czech Republic." "Can I see it?" "Okay." She said, "Oh, I didn't buy anything like this. I don't want this so much bother me for." But I'm trying not to be nasty. And so I said, "Would you like to buy the book?" I don't really want it, but I didn't want to just have this Czech krona. I said, "Okay." So we worked out a price. And so she's getting ready to put the book in her bag, in her purse. I said, "But before you do it, let me just thumb through it." And I found this photograph and another one. And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but I can't sell you this book." And this is a more in change in the Czech Republic in the 17th century. Next. Here you have, this is an interesting one. This is a man named Abraham Hannibal. He is an African who ends up in Europe at the beginning of the 17th century. He is given as a gift to the Tsar or Kaiser or Emperor of Russia, Peter I, who takes a liking towards his child. I would like to think it was innocent. He sends the precocious little boy, he sends the child to France for an education, and he becomes a general in the Russian army. Now, apparently he knew he was going to have a military career, because next he adopted as his emblem, go to the next slide, an African elephant. Now, Peter gave him the name Petrovich, or son of Peter, which was the Russian tradition. But he took the name Hannibal, the most illustrious African military figure he could identify with. Now, that's got to be an African consciousness there. That was all the things he could have picked. He picked an African elephant and took the name Hannibal. Next. This is one of his children. Next. But the most famous of his ancestors or his descendants is Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin, who became the father of Russian literature, who bragged about his African ancestry. He was always talking about his great-granddaddy. And he prided himself on that, on his African identity. He had a vocabulary of 20,000 words. He is the Russian equivalent to Shakespeare. Next. And then you see, in his study is an image of a black man breaking the chains of slavery 200 years ago. He was anti-slavery. He was pro-African. Imagine that, the consciousness that these brothers must have had. You get my point? Next. This is a statue of Pushkin, next, black. And this is another statue of him in the city of, I think, St. Petersburg. He's called the Russian Atom, the Russian Springtime. Next. Here's an interesting one also from Russia. This is St. George and the Dragon. Now, when I was in England, people told me, "You know St. George was black, right?" I said, "Sure. Send me a picture." And they sent me a picture. Now, I don't know. You see the dragon down there. You heard of St. George and the Dragon? There's the dragon. Now, I don't know if St. George is black or not, but I do know that the artist didn't have any problem painting that horse white. If he was trying, he didn't have a problem with the concept of the color white. And it seems to me he could have painted St. George the same way. Next. I thought you all would have thought that was humorous, but you did not. This is Ira Aldridge, the African-American Shakespearean actor who spent time in Russia. Next. This is too late to laugh now. This is from the Capitolini Museum in Italy, in Rome. You have a black fertility figure that's there before the people call it Romans. Next. I'm trying to hurry up. This is the Black Virgin of Paris. This is an image of a black Madonna in a church, a small church behind a big cathedral on the outskirts of Paris. I got this the last time I was there. You see Jesus with the little frizzy afro. It's blonde, but it's frizzy. And what she's holding is the national symbol of France. This is called the Black Virgin of Paris, and it's the most important of the Madonna figures in France, at least in Paris. Next. This is another image in that book that the Jewish lady in the Czech Republic wanted to buy. And this is another black Madonna. Next. This is a cameo. I got this one in Austria. Next. This is an image of one of the three wise men. In the European Middle Ages, it was a popular thing to paint the youngest of the three wise men as an African. You can go to New York and go to the Bronx. This is in a museum called the Cloisters Collection, affiliated with the Metropolitan Museum of Art. That's my picture. Next. And here's a close-up. Next. Now, here's an interesting one. This one is also from England, and this brother's name is John Blanc. And this is a painting in the early part of the 16th century. This was the greatest trumpet player in Europe. He was the personal trumpet player of Henry VIII. And he won music awards in Westminster, England in 1511 AD. 500 years ago, you had a brother blowing people away with his trumpet in the UK. Before Miles Davis, before Lee Morgan, before Wynton Marsalis was a twinkle in anybody's eye. And there he is for you to see. Next. This is also in England. This is a black saint on the side of Westminster Abbey Cathedral. This lady is from Southern Africa. She was martyred for her faith in 1928. And this is a statue of a black saint on the side of Westminster Abbey in England. She looks like Angela Bassett. Next. The Chevalier de Saint George. This is a black composer. This brother is born in Guadeloupe in the Caribbean on Christmas Day, 1745. He is a fencer. You can see the sword in his hand. He is a violinist, a real ladies' man, they tell me. He died broke, I'm sad to say. There's a lesson to be learned from that, possibly. And he is a composer. He is sometimes called the Black Mozart. Next. These are black children in Wales. I always wanted to go to Wales, so I went. And these are black children. This is a postcard I got from like the 1930s in Wales. They're either from Guyana or Jamaica. But you have a lot of folk from the English-speaking Caribbean in that part of the world. Next. And then you have, this is an image I got in the museum, the Liechtenstein Museum in Vienna, Austria. Next. From Holland. Next. Look at these statues. It looks like these people are alive. These are statues in 19th century Europe. Next. Look at that sister. This is done about 1850. Next. Look at this brother. I know the ladies like that. Y'all ain't gonna say nothing, but I know you do. Next. And this is Mary Seacole. This sister is from Jamaica. She became a nurse. She worked with Florence Nightingale, but you never hear about her. From Jamaica, Mary Seacole, or perhaps it's pronounced Seacole, S-E-A-C-O-L-E. Next. From England. Next. This is the desk of Sigmund Freud in Vienna, Austria. Look at those Egyptian figurines up there. Freud was fascinated by Egypt, the so-called father of modern psychoanalysis. And one of his students actually went to Africa, a man named Carl Jung, went to Kenya. And in his memoir, I said, I feel like ancient voices are calling me. That's Sigmund Freud. Freud wrote a book called Moses and Monotheism, where he talked about Akhenaten. Sigmund Freud. Next. And then this is what's happening in the UK now, and in France, and Europe in general, this concept that you are not black, you are not white, you're just British. We don't want to hear that black stuff. That sound familiar to you? You're just a person. You're just a human being. And I had a lot of problems with that. They had a lot of problems with me. Because I'm an African before I'm anything. At least that's how I see myself. I have a race-first philosophy. That means I believe we should spend money with other black folk, whenever possible. That we should marry black folk all the time, with no exceptions. That you should live in a black community, that you should strive to uplift your community. I am what I like to call myself a race man. Next. All right, we're in the Americas. We're going to finish up. Gary, this is a new picture, Never been in a, well, I saw it in one book, but not this particular variation of it. This is from Belize in Central America. This is the National Museum in Belize, and this is a Mayan bowl. It's about 1,300 years old. It's from the late classic Mayan period. And it shows 5 black men in full body armor going to war in Mayan history. Black people came to America before Columbus. And the information is there. It should be in the school books already. Next. From Mexico. Actually, this is a funny story. This will probably be the last story I attempt to tell with humor in it. And what happened here, I got this in a museum in Orange County, outside of LA, the Bowers Museum. They had an exhibit they were advertising called the Queen of Sheba. So I was in LA for a couple